Do you want to store your raunchy photos online so nobody can see them on your phone? Well, look no further than Filecoin, a storage provider that helps you store your data in the cloud at a low cost, so you can never be embarrassed again when someone looks through your photos and sees something that they shouldn't. But Filecoin. So Filecoin is the blockchain that allows people to offer their storage data in exchange for rewards of Filecoin, and also for users to store their data in the cloud for a very cheap price when compared to AWS. In this video, we're going to be discussing Filecoin. We're going to be looking at the revenue numbers year over year. We're going to be looking at how they've achieved that growth or decline, as well as looking at the things surrounding it, perhaps like that ICO, which was a little bit skeptical, which we'll get into later. At the end of the video, I'll give my price prediction and my absolute thoughts on Filecoin in this bull market, and whether I think it's a good investment in this bull run when compared to other crypto projects in a similar size of the large altcoins such as ICP, Render, etc. So if you do like the information, guys, I'm always looking to bring detailed information on projects so you don't make FOMO decisions and you can make informed decisions on projects in this bull run, because there is going to be a lot of hype and a lot of talk. So you want to be making sure you're investing in tokens with real utility and long-term projects, not just ones that are going to dump on you. So we discussed what coin is. Very simply, it is storage in the cloud. But let's start with its ICO. So if we take a look at Filecoin during its ICO, it absolutely peaked at around $186, and it just absolutely rocketed whilst quickly falling rapidly. So it seemed a little bit odd. It's very similar to the ICP release, which was orchestrated by FTX. So it's a little bit sus, but weirdly, articles have only started to come out recently. And we can see here this article from CoinMarketCap. Is Filecoin a fraud orchestrated by ETH Foundation and CCP entities? And what it basically says, I think this article is a little bit better, so I won't go into too much detail, but essentially there was some shady stuff going on in the ICO, which had some shady associations with entities like the Ethereum Foundation, Wang Xiang, Prometheum, and others. And essentially what they found was a load of wallets sending ETH with unusually long decimal numbers, and it basically raised suspicions that these transactions created a widespread interest in Filecoin's ICO. And it's worth noting that these tactics are often used to manipulate markets. They're trying to scam you. They're trying to get you to buy or coin. So you can see here, there was just a ton of transactions with random decimal points of ETH. 228 of the 1,255 transactions, the 1,255 transactions had ETH sent in quantities that ended with this decimal point, as well as many in these. So it is a little bit suspect, and it's basically them saying that a handful of VCs were trying to get you to ape into the coin by pumping. So that we've seen before regularly in a lot of cryptos. We've seen this in ICP in the very early days, the FTX scam, and ICP is now doing very well. So is this something to be worried about? Potentially, but it's still very new as well, and Filecoin hasn't really got that reputation as a scam yet, and I'm not saying that it will either. I'm just saying this is something to be concerned about. But anyway, that's just something to keep in mind when thinking about Filecoin. There was something shady going on. However, it doesn't take away from the fact that it has revenue. It has good revenue. It's not a bad project in that respect. And let's dive into the numbers. So this is a revenue report for 2023 for Filecoin, and we can see that basically did protocol revenue in FIL, and this just takes away from price fluctuation, so we can just see the revenue in Filecoin. And essentially it did 1.3 million in Filecoin, or $6.9 million, up 21.4%, and Q2 11.5 million, up 66% on the year before. However, for Q3, we see it drop 72% year on year and 58% drop in quarter 4. So this was a 77% reduction over the last year. And if we take a look at the supply side revenue, so this is essentially for people supplying the storage, and the protocol revenue is people essentially putting their data in the storage, as well as making data calls, which they charge a fee for. So we can see the supply side revenue wasn't down quite as much for the first 2 quarters. First 2 quarters, it was down less. However, the last 2, it was down more. But why was revenue down? Partly, they've been trying to reduce the cost of storing data. So we'll actually see that the protocol revenue is down significantly more than the supply side revenue. And that is because they've been driving down the cost to store your data to become much more competitive. And there's something else that feeds into this as well, and partly because of junk data, people were storing data on the Filecoin servers and basically collecting the rewards of storing that data by making calls or just general upkeep costs. So Filecoin has now introduced an incentive, and this incentive is called Fil Plus. And under this, storage providers can earn 10 times the block reward or amount to Fil token. With a typical deal, by working with trustworthy clients such as university and research facilities, these clients apply to notaries or community elected trustees to verify the data they're storing. And essentially what this is doing is that it's trying to avoid junk data on the servers, so 10x rewards to storage providers to essentially use people who are providing data who are trustworthy, who are actually providing genuine data, not just a bunch of gifts to reap the rewards. So a lot of this growth has actually been due to this incentive program. In response, Filecoin has basically said it expects to offset this incentive program when it is reduced by increasing revenue through data retrieval. So essentially people who have stored that data is saying that it's going to make more money by them making withdrawal requests for data, and that's basically their idea of how they're going to offset it. And according to this article from Masari, the decline in protocol revenue is in line with a reduced demand for decentralized cloud storage and partly from the reduction in demand. But let's look at whether this coin is currently worth what it is valued at. And if we take its revenue from 2023, we can see it's around 320 million. Which is pretty good for a crypto project. And also Uniswap has also just now been hosted on Filecoin, and many other crypto projects will likely start to store their data on Filecoin instead of AWS, which currently powers a massive amount of the crypto market. And the goal is to move to a more decentralized market. So essentially, it would try take away market share from AWS, particularly in the crypto space, which is kind of huge. Anyway, if it's 4 billion market cap, let's say it's 4 billion divided by 322 million revenue, which gives it a PE of 12.4. Now, this isn't exactly right because they're actually net negative due to this incentive program. So why they're actually doing a lot of revenue, they're actually not making any profit. But this is an insane PE ratio. Is actually one of the best I have seen in the crypto space. So in that aspect, compared to a lot of other cryptos, it's pretty undervalued. So where's my price target for Filecoin? Well, this one is quite difficult because there are a lot of things hinged on it. One, their incentive program is currently propping up the coin quite a lot. And two, we don't really know how, when that incentive program disappears, how that revenue will be affected. But nonetheless, Filecoin is still a great project. And when compared to a lot of other cryptos, it's still incredibly undervalued in my opinion. I expect at least a 10x there. At least $70. That is on the conservative estimate, and I give that conservative estimate because I'm unsure how these incentive programs, once lost, will affect the revenue, because a lot of that growth is currently driven by that. And the other problem is a lot of users have reported that Filecoin is very difficult to use for storage. It's very difficult to retrieve your data. There's no virtual machine on there to do that. It's still got a long way before it can serve a lot of customers. Currently, it only really works for enterprise people, and data retrieval is very hard. So again, that could play into what they're saying about data retrieval revenue increasing, because if they can make the retrieval process easier, then revenues will go up because people will actively retrieve their data more, instead of what I imagine it to be right now. It's just an Arctic storage, which a lot of these articles on Reddit, etc., just the general user experience have said, almost too difficult to retrieve your data currently or use the platform, that you just end up storing the data because it's so cheap. So it ends up just being data that sits there and not really used. Anyway, that was a deep dive into Filecoin. I think it's a good project. It probably will look to power a lot of the crypto market as a lot of these new projects develop and require much more storage. So I don't think it's a bad investment. Again, I think it could be 5-10% of your portfolio. It looks a lot better than the others. but there's definitely a few things that it needs to get right for it to work out well. Anyway, if you liked the information today, guys, like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next